everybody, welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces Talks Music. So today we are talking about The Cure's second album, 17 Seconds. This album was released in April of 1980 and it was put out on Fiction Records. And I was always super happy when I could walk into a record store and find anything on Fiction Records that was by The Cure that I didn't have yet. Probably my third favorite label to find. I loved finding, of course, Factory Records. I also loved finding Mute Records, but Fiction Records was right up there for me. So The Cure's first album is very eclectic and strange. I don't think it's much of a shock to say that they really weren't The Cure yet. You know, it was just this group of young people, young musicians, putting out all kinds of crazy stuff, whatever they could think of, right? And it's a fun album. I mean, if you don't have Three Imaginary Boys, you have to grab it. You seriously do, especially if you're a Cure fan. But for me, honestly, Three Imaginary Boys is probably the only tune. I haven't listened to it in a while, but from my memory, it's probably the only tune that I really consider to be a Cure tune. Everything else is just so strange and fun and interesting. Boys Don't Cry, I've never been a big fan of. It's just a poppy hit. But Three Imaginary Boys, the song, I really, really do love. And I feel like it's probably The Cure's first real tune. So after that album came out, they started touring with Siouxsie and the Banshees for a while, and Robert Smith started learning all the Siouxsie and the Banshee tunes on guitar. Now, this is not the time that he was the guitar player for Siouxsie and the Banshees. That's later. That's a few years later. But because they were touring with Siouxsie and the Banshees, and he was learning all these new tunes, it really changed him as a songwriter. You could say he matured a little bit, right? I feel like people grow up all their lives. I learn new things continuously, you know. I look back 10 years ago and just think, what was I thinking? You know what I mean? But there is definitely a maturity that comes from touring, from just playing night after night after night. And for him, for mixing with other bands, for hanging out with Siouxsie and the Banshees. It had a really profound effect on him as a songwriter. So there is a massive difference between Three Imaginary Boys and 17 Seconds. It's not even the same band, it feels like. And of course, there were member changes. The most consistent member for The Cure, obviously, has always been Robert Smith. It's not like The Fall, where literally the only consistent member is Marky Smith, right? In this case, you will recognize names as you go, even up to today, I assume. But Robert Smith is the most consistent member of The Cure, of course. And speaking of today, actually, the reason we chose to talk about The Cure this week is because they actually have released a new single, which you can find on their YouTube channel. It's called Alone, and it's surprisingly really good. And they have a new album coming out on November 1st. So it's a very good time to be a Cure fan. For the tune Alone, I really stopped following bands in the mid-90s. I think for most people, certainly for me, when you're a young person, that's when music is the most influential in your life, I believe. And of course, that's why we're talking about 17 Seconds, right? And not something from 2007 or whatever, you know. There's not going to be a lot of new stuff on this channel just because you get old and you get nostalgic. You know, you look for the stuff you used to listen to rather than what's new and interesting out there. That's not really a thing. So for me, oddly enough, the last Cure album that I really got into was Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me. Disintegration, I really couldn't get on board with. And I'm thinking, after listening to this new tune, which is very good, you should check it out. After listening to this, I kind of realized that The Cure, a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times, The Cure will not have a build through a song. It starts the same way it ends. You'll have this 6-minute thing that just drones on exactly the same from beginning to end. Of course, you can say, yeah, but Robert's not singing yet, right? Of course. It's kind of this weird structure that's just built to showcase the lyrics, which there's nothing wrong with at all. But I like things to build. I want something to start one way and then grow and progress and finish another way, especially if it's a longer track. And I feel like Alone is kind of this way. It's weird because the rhythm section is really kind of aggressive. There's a lot of fuzz on the bass or the guitar. I'm not sure what instrument it is, but there's a lot of fuzz on that, and the snare drum is really, the attack is really strong on it. Right? It's loud, I guess is the best way I can describe it. But then you've got these floaty keyboards, and it's like this weird contradiction, and it just goes through the whole thing, and the lyrics are really interesting and dark and strange. Of course, it's The Cure, and they come in after a bit. You get the nice lyrics, and then the song ends. But I do feel like the tune could have benefited from maybe not having the rhythm section in the beginning, or having it be way toned down and then having it grow in aggression as the tune goes. And that's just, of course, my stupid opinion about it. The YouTube channel has like 1.5 million subscribers. People are loving the tune, sincerely. Read through the comments. It's insane. People love it. And it is definitely worth checking out. You'll probably love it as well, to be perfectly honest, especially if you're a Cure fan. But for me personally, I do wish their music would progress a little bit through each tune, not just be exactly the same from beginning to end. But that's why we chose to talk about The Cure this week. It's a big, important time for The Cure, and I'm glad they're still doing stuff. I'm glad this new tune sounds so good. I'm glad that people are loving it. This album might do well for them, and that would be incredible. I always wish that for the bands that I loved in the past. Always, I hope that they can be successful and be happy. I would hate to think of them like homeless and, something that was so important to me, but they're struggling. I wouldn't want that to be true. So hopefully this album does very well for them. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this big change that The Cure went through from 79 to 1980. There's 10 tracks on this album, 5 on side A, 5 on side B. You must pick up the 2005 remaster. Do not look for this on record. Buy that 2005 remaster, of course, because it's got a second disc of all kinds of crazy stuff, including Cult Hero, which you got to have. Cult Hero and I Dig You are incredible. I was reading a little bit. I don't know a lot about why that happened or what exactly that is, but it's just this goofy little sidetrack that Robert Smith put together. And according to what I read, he got his postman to sing the lyrics for him. So that's really interesting. They only did 2 tunes. It's probably, to be honest, it's probably the last hurrah of the 1979 stuff. Probably the true end of that era. And it's absolutely worth having. Make sure you get the 2005 remaster of all the Cure albums, because there's so much interesting stuff that's been tacked onto it. Live performances, all kinds of great stuff. It's truly, truly worth it. But side A has 5 songs, side B has 5 songs. Side A is cool because it's got these 2 creepy instrumentals that open the side and close the side, and then 3 tunes in the middle. And obviously, they're really incredible songs. For me, I don't think it gets any better than 17 Seconds, Faith, and Pornography. Those 3 albums, for me, really, really are The Cure. Of course, I like Head on the Door, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me. They're fine. It's weird that as time goes on, I feel like the singles became more important than the overall albums, especially Head on the Door. Head on the Door is so weirdly eclectic and strange. The top is kind of that way too. Like you've got one thing happening and then all of a sudden they're doing something completely different. It's a very eclectic approach, I guess, to songwriting and putting together an album. It's kind of strange. I feel like Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me is that way as well. Although, to me, I felt like it was a lot more consistent than the previous albums. And I think that's why I kind of landed on that one for the later stuff. All right, so side one, you've got the two creepy instrumentals, which are awesome. And then you've got Play for Today, Secrets, and In Your House. Three great, great tunes. I really appreciate in this earlier stuff the aggression that they still have. And I really think it comes through in the lyrics and in the music. Robert Smith has had a very interesting approach to friendship and to women. Obviously, he's a very intelligent person, and I think as a young person, he was very aware of the games that young people would play with each other. I don't mean like children's games. I mean like mind games that, you know, like if you're at a party and you try to stand in the corner, right, and you wear all black so that people will come up to you and talk to you. You know what I mean? The things that young people can do to try to be different or to try to fit in. I think he was very aware of that kind of stuff, and he would often talk about those kind of things in his lyrics. Like in Play for Today, he talks about how the person he's with is always crying, and he's aware that that's just the role that they're playing in the play that they're doing today. Like the whole thing is just pre-scripted and faked, like they're acting, they're pretending. It's kind of a sarcastic point of view. And he does talk about, I was reading that after Pornography, or maybe it was after Faith, I'm not sure, somewhere in that period, probably after Pornography, he kind of realized how cruel he was being to his friends and to his loved ones. And I think that's probably something that occurs to all of us at one point in time or another, where we just kind of realize, wow, either I've grown up a little bit and I'm beginning to realize that I shouldn't be behaving that way, or I need to grow up a little bit. You know what I mean? And everybody goes through those stages, you know? I would never want a person to look back on a time when they were 17 and did something stupid and feel ashamed or embarrassed about it. I mean, you have to feel ashamed because that's the way you grow up, right? You have to realize the stupid things that you've done, but you have to do those stupid things. If you never did those stupid things, you would never grow up. And that's kind of a contradiction because you wouldn't need to grow up because you weren't doing stupid things, but that's not the way it works. You have to do the stupid things to grow up. You know what I mean? So this is just like a time capsule of The Cure of Robert Smith, and it's very cool. It's very well put together and interesting, and I really, really love it. Especially Play for Today. Excellent tune on side one. So then side two opens with a creepy instrumental. It doesn't close with a creepy instrumental. It closes with the title track of the album, 17 Seconds. You've got M at Night and 17 Seconds, all great tunes, but of course, side two has A Forest. And A Forest is a massive peak for this album, and I believe for their career at the time, of course. The single did incredibly, incredibly well. And it's probably my favorite Cure song of all time. I love A Forest. And a lot of that's nostalgia, of course, you know. I picked up the single way, way back, and I just played that thing to death. You know how kids are, right? They will just harp on something and just play it and play it and play it. And that was definitely me with The Forest. I loved this tune. So this is truly, truly an incredible album. If you don't know where to start with The Cure, this is an excellent place to start. You can go from 17 Seconds to Faith to Pornography, and then you can choose if you want to go forward or if you want to jump back to Three Imaginary Boys just to see what that thing's like. I think a lot of people would say to start with Disintegration, and that's a good choice, I guess. It's just not my favorite. It's just so eclectic You know, I mean, for me, the single that came out before the album came out that got tons of airplay was Fascination Street. And I love that tune. It's so aggressive and it's so driving and dark, and I just ate it up. I was so excited for the new album based on that tune. And it's kind of the only thing on the album that sounds like that. That's kind of a poor choice. I hate to say it. That's not the way to promo a new album coming out by a band. But of course, obviously, the album is massively successful. The same thing happened to Depeche Mode. Their album in the early 90s, I think, is the best selling album they've got. And I'm not a huge fan of it because I like the earlier stuff. But New Wave just had this weird peak. I don't know what happened. It was like the thing all through the 80s. And then it was kind of fading out. Things were changing. All good things, right? Things were changing, different types of music were happening. And then you get these two monumental albums. You get Disintegration, and then a little bit later you get, I think it's called Songs of Faith and Devotion. I'm probably messing that up, but you know, you get these two massive new wave, sort of new wave albums. The Cure, I think you can definitely say is new wave. Depeche Mode, I think it starts to get muddy around this time for exactly what they're doing, which is fine. I think they've gone on to inspire all kinds of other different things that I don't know anything about. But for me personally, if you're looking to get started with The Cure, if you love what you're hearing, you're going to get the new album, you're going to love that, I would go back to Here. I would not just go straight to Disintegration, because I believe you're going to get your fill of that kind of stuff off the new album. I think the new album's going to be a lot like Disintegration was, which why not? It's kind of their peak, right? Why wouldn't you sort of try to recapture that? So I feel like the new album might be a lot like Disintegration is. So maybe come back here because it's incredible. It truly, truly is. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit the like button and make sure to subscribe because we have so much more. And have a great day.